When I turned on the TV that night, I froze. The man speaking looked exactly like my son. The same eyes, the same smile. The son I lost 30 years ago without a trace. My teacup slipped from my hands as I whispered, "Daniel?" But how could it be him, after all these years? I was sitting in my small living room, a cup of tea trembling in my old hands, when the television flickered to life. I wasn't really watching, just letting the voices fill the silence that had followed me for years. Then suddenly, the news anchor said something that made my heart stop. A group of volunteers was being interviewed after helping rescue flood victims in another town. Among them stood a tall man with kind blue eyes and a scar above his right eyebrow. My heart froze. That scar. That face. That smile. I leaned closer, my breath caught in my throat. "No, it can't be," I whispered. But it was him. It looked just like him. My son, my only child, who had been missing for 30 long years. I felt dizzy as I grabbed the edge of the table for support. The reporter said his name was Daniel Carter. But that was my son's name too. Could it be? Could my Daniel still be alive after all these years? Tears blurred my vision. My whole body shook. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. When the camera zoomed in on his face, my teacup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. My heart pounded so fast I thought it might burst. I stood up and pointed at the television, whispering his name over and over again. "Daniel. Daniel." Then the man turned to face the camera fully, and I gasped so loudly my neighbor, Mrs. Green, came rushing in from next door. But before I could speak, the TV cut to a commercial. I screamed. And just like that, the man who looked like my son disappeared from the screen. My legs gave way beneath me. Was it really him? Or was my old mind finally playing tricks after 30 years of heartbreak? I didn't know. But what I did know was this. I had to find that man. I had to find out the truth. 30 years earlier, everything was different. The house was full of laughter then. My son Daniel was just 19. A bright young man with dreams bigger than our little town. His father, my late husband, had passed when Daniel was only 10, so it had been just the two of us for most of his life. Daniel was my whole world. He loved fixing things, working on old engines, helping neighbors with broken fences. He always said, "One day, Mom, I'll build you a big house with a garden full of roses." But fate had other plans. It started on an ordinary morning. The sky was gray, and Daniel was packing his small brown suitcase. He'd gotten a job offer in the next city, a mechanic apprentice position. It wasn't far, just a few hours away, and he promised to call me every Sunday. I remember the way he hugged me before leaving. "Don't cry, Mom," he said, smiling. "It's just for a little while. I'll come visit soon." That was the last time I saw him. 2 days later, I received a call from his new employer saying Daniel never showed up for work. I thought it was a mistake. I called his friends, the bus station, even the police. No one had seen him since he left home. At first, I believed he'd be found soon. Maybe the bus broke down, maybe he lost his wallet, maybe he just wanted some time alone. But as days turned to weeks, and weeks to months, hope began to fade. I searched everywhere. Put up posters, spoke to newspapers, even called radio stations. I would walk down every street with his picture in my hand, asking strangers if they'd seen my boy. Every night, I'd fall asleep by the window, waiting for his shadow to appear at the gate. But he never came home. The police investigated for years, but nothing. No body, no trace, no clue. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. Some people said he ran away. Others said he might have been kidnapped. A few even whispered terrible things, things no mother should ever hear. I refused to believe he was gone. I couldn't. A mother feels when her child is gone forever. And deep inside, I still felt Daniel's heartbeat somewhere out there. Life after that was hard. The house became too quiet. The laughter, the light, everything disappeared. I stopped celebrating Christmas. I stopped going to church. I just waited. Sometimes I'd dream of him. He'd walk into the kitchen, smiling like he used to, and say, "Mom, I'm home." I'd wake up crying every time. 30 years passed. 30 birthdays, 30 Christmases, 30 long years of loneliness. People told me to move on, but how can a mother move on from her missing child? You don't move on. You just learn to live with the ache. Then that night everything changed. When I saw that man on TV, something inside me reignited. Hope, a dangerous, painful hope. But I didn't care. I had to know. I grabbed the remote, replayed the broadcast, and froze the frame when his face appeared again. I moved closer to the screen until my nose almost touched it. That scar above his eyebrow. It was from when Daniel fell off his bike when he was 7. I still remembered the way he cried, and how I kissed the wound after cleaning it. It was him. I was sure. I quickly called the TV station's number, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. "Hello, please," I begged. "That man you showed on the news, Daniel Carter, the one helping with the flood rescue. Can you tell me where that was filmed?" The woman on the other end hesitated. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, we can't give out personal information." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Please. I'm his mother. He's been missing for 30 years. She must have heard the desperation in my voice because after a long pause, she said softly, "That footage was from Riverdale County, ma'am. That's all I can tell you." Riverdale County. 3 hours away. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my coat, my old handbag, and the photograph of Daniel I'd kept by my bedside for decades. My heart thumped with a mix of fear and hope as I stepped outside into the cold night air. For the first time in years, I felt alive again. But as I was locking my door, my neighbor Mrs. Green came rushing over. "Where are you going at this hour?" she asked. "I think I found my son," I whispered, my voice trembling. She looked shocked. "Your son? After all these years?" "Yes," I said, clutching the photo to my chest. "He's alive. I saw him on TV." Mrs. Green grabbed my hand. "Margaret, are you sure? You've been through so much. What if it's someone else?" "It's him," I said firmly. "I know my own son." She sighed. "Then I'm coming with you." Before I could protest, she ran inside to grab her coat and keys. I was grateful, even though I didn't say it. We got into her old blue car and began the long drive through the night toward Riverdale County. The road was dark and empty, and the only sound was the engine humming and my heart pounding in my chest. Every few miles, Mrs. Green would glance at me and say softly, "We'll find him, Margaret." I nodded, holding the photograph tight. The same photo I'd shown to every police officer, every reporter, every stranger who would listen. But what if I was wrong? What if 30 years had changed him so much that I was chasing a ghost? The thought made me shiver. And then out of nowhere, the car jerked violently to the side. Mrs. Green screamed as the tires skidded on the wet road. We crashed into the guardrail with a loud bang. The windshield shattered. Everything went dark. The sound of rain was the first thing I heard. It was tapping gently on the broken windshield, steady and soft, like fingers on glass. My head throbbed, and everything around me felt blurry. I blinked several times until my vision cleared enough to see the faint glow of the dashboard lights. "Mrs. Green," I whispered weakly. She groaned beside me, holding her arm. I'm okay, Margaret," she said, her voice shaky. "Just shaken." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My heart was still racing, my palms slick with sweat. The car had come to a stop just inches away from the edge of a small ditch. If we'd gone any farther, we might have rolled over. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, listening to the rain and the soft hiss of the engine cooling down. Then Mrs. Green looked at me, her face pale. "Are you sure we shouldn't turn back? This could be a sign." I shook my head, my voice firm even through the pain. "No. We've come too far to stop now. If I turn back tonight, I'll never forgive myself." She sighed and nodded slowly. "All right. Let's see if this old thing can still move." Thankfully, the car engine started again after a few tries, though the right headlight was gone. We drove slowly the rest of the way, both of us too shaken to talk much. I stared out the window at the passing trees, my thoughts spinning. What if I was chasing a shadow? What if it was just a man who looked like Daniel? But what if it was really him? My heart clenched with every what if. By the time we reached Riverdale County, the rain had stopped. The streets were quiet, the air damp and cold. We parked near the main square, where the TV report had shown the volunteers working. I got out, clutching Daniel's photo tightly, my fingers trembling. The morning sky was turning light blue, and people were already moving around, cleaning up after the flood. My eyes darted across the faces, searching, hoping for one I'd know anywhere. Mrs. Green and I walked toward a group of men stacking sandbags. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself forward. "Excuse me," I called softly to one of them. "Do you know a man named Daniel Carter? He was here helping with the rescue." The man wiped sweat from his brow. "Daniel? Oh yeah. He was here yesterday. Kind guy. Drove one of the rescue trucks." My heart leaped. "Do you know where he went?" He nodded toward the east side of town. Said he was staying with the local church volunteers. Over at St. Mary's Chapel. Before he could say more, I was already thanking him and walking away. My legs felt like they were moving on their own. Mrs. Green hurried to keep up. When we reached the church, I froze at the entrance. My hands were shaking so much I could barely open the door. The smell of damp wood and candle wax filled the air. Inside, a few people were sitting quietly, resting after a long night of work. I scanned every face, my eyes searching desperately. Then near the back of the room I saw him. A tall man, with brown hair sprinkled with gray, sitting alone, cleaning mud from his boots. My heart skipped a beat. The same jawline. The same scar. My knees went weak. "Daniel," I whispered under my breath. Mrs. Green touched my arm. "Is that him?" I nodded, tears filling my eyes. "It's him." I took a deep breath and walked closer, each step feeling heavier than the last. My mind was a storm of hope and fear. What if he didn't recognize me? What if he'd forgotten me? When I was just a few feet away, he looked up. His blue eyes met mine. For a moment, everything around us disappeared. The noise, the people, the years. He frowned slightly. "Can I help you, ma'am?" My throat tightened. "Daniel," I whispered again, barely able to breathe. He looked confused. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Those words hit me like a knife. My legs trembled, and I had to grab a nearby chair to stay upright. "It's me," I said, my voice shaking. "It's your mother." He froze. His eyes widened, and for a moment I saw something flicker in them, something like recognition. But just as quickly he shook his head. "There must be some mistake," he said softly. "My mother died a long time ago." My heart cracked. No, Daniel. I'm alive. I never stopped looking for you." He stood up slowly, studying my face as if searching for something familiar. His hands trembled slightly. "My mother's name was Margaret Carter," he said quietly. "That's me," I cried. "Margaret Carter. Your mother. My boy. I thought I'd lost you forever." He stepped back, shaking his head in disbelief. "This isn't possible," he murmured. "My mother, he paused, his voice breaking. "She died in a fire when I was young. They told me she was gone." I stared at him, stunned. "A fire? Daniel, there was no fire. You disappeared 30 years ago." He looked down, his face pale. No, that can't be right." Mrs. Green, who had been standing silently behind me, spoke up. "Sir, please listen to her. She's telling the truth. I've known her all my life. She's been searching for you since the day you vanished." Daniel ran his hands through his hair, pacing. "This can't be real," he said under his breath. "I remember being taken away, the hospital, the confusion, and then the people who said they were my family." My heart stopped. "Taken away? What do you mean, Daniel?" He looked up at me, his face pale as a ghost. I don't remember everything. Just pieces. Waking up in a hospital bed. People telling me my name was Daniel, but with a different last name. Carter wasn't it. They said I had no surviving family. My breath caught in my chest. "Oh my God," I whispered. "You were alive all along, but someone lied to you." He looked at me, his eyes glistening. "If what you're saying is true, then who were the people who raised me?" Before I could answer, a voice called from behind him. "Daniel, there you are." We both turned. A middle-aged woman in a nurse's uniform was standing at the church doorway, her face stern. When her eyes landed on me, they narrowed instantly. "Who is this?" she asked coldly. "What's going on here?" Daniel looked between us, confused. This woman says she's my mother." The nurse's expression hardened. "Daniel, come with me. Now." Wait, I cried. Please, I need to talk to him. The woman stepped forward, glaring at me. You need to leave. You're upsetting him. Mrs. Green stepped in front of me protectively. And who are you to decide that? The woman ignored her and grabbed Daniel's arm. Let's go. These people are mistaken. Daniel pulled his arm back slightly. Stop it, Clara, he said quietly. I want to hear her out. Her eyes flashed with anger. No, Daniel. You can't trust strangers. You know that. I could see the confusion in his face, the battle between what he remembered and what he felt. My heart ached for him. Please, Daniel. I whispered. Just listen to me. I can prove it. I still have your childhood photo. The one you took on your 10th birthday, by the rose bush your father planted. You were wearing your red sweater. Daniel froze. Slowly, he looked at me with wide eyes. How do you know that? Tears rolled down my face. Because I was there, my darling boy. I took that picture. He stared at me, breathing hard. His lips parted, as if words were trying to come out. But before he could say anything, the nurse suddenly reached into her bag, pulled out a small bottle, and sprayed something into his face. He gasped and stumbled backward. Daniel! I screamed, rushing forward. He collapsed to the floor unconscious. Mrs. Green shouted. What did you do to him? But before we could reach her, the nurse turned and ran out the church door into the pouring rain. I dropped to my knees beside Daniel, shaking him desperately. Daniel! Wake up! Please! His chest rose and fell faintly, but his eyes stayed closed. Tears streamed down my face as I held his hand to my heart. After 30 years of waiting, I had finally found my son, only to lose him again. The sound of sirens grew louder in the distance as Mrs. Green shouted for help. I was kneeling beside Daniel, cradling his head in my lap, rain dripping through the church's open door. His skin felt cold, and his breathing was shallow. My heart was pounding so fast I could barely think. Stay with me, Daniel. I whispered, my hands trembling. Please stay with me. 2 men who had been helping at the church rushed over. What happened? One asked, kneeling beside me. That woman, she sprayed something in his face. Mrs. Green cried. She ran that way. The man turned to the other volunteer. Call the police. Tell them a man's been attacked. Within minutes, an ambulance pulled up outside the church. I didn't want to let go of Daniel's hand, but one of the paramedics gently lifted him onto a stretcher. He's still breathing, she said calmly. We'll take care of him. Please, I begged, gripping the side of the stretcher. I'm his mother. Let me go with him. The paramedic nodded. Of course. Come with us. Mrs. Green squeezed my hand. Go, Margaret. I'll speak to the police when they arrive. I'll tell them everything. I nodded, tears filling my eyes again. Thank you, I whispered. The ambulance doors closed, and the siren wailed as we sped through the wet streets. I held Daniel's hand the whole way, my heart breaking at how pale and still he looked. I couldn't lose him now, not after 30 long years of searching. At the hospital, they rushed him into the emergency room. I sat in the hallway, staring at the floor, whispering prayers over and over. Please God, don't take him from me again. After what felt like hours, a doctor came out. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a calm voice. Ma'am, he's stable now, he said. Whatever was used on him caused temporary paralysis and drowsiness, but he should wake up soon. You did the right thing getting him here quickly. Tears of relief rolled down my cheeks. Thank you, doctor. Can I see him? He nodded. Yes, but just for a few minutes. He needs rest. When I entered the room, I almost couldn't breathe. Daniel was lying in bed, hooked up to a monitor, but the color had returned to his face. I pulled a chair close and sat down, holding his hand gently. I looked at his face, the man he had become. 30 years had changed him, but beneath the lines and stubble, he was still my boy. My Daniel. I brushed his hair from his forehead and whispered softly, You're home now, sweetheart. I'm never letting anyone take you away again. He stirred a little, his fingers twitching in mine. Then slowly his eyelids fluttered open. Mom, he whispered weakly. I froze. My heart stopped. Yes, darling, I said, my voice breaking. I'm here. He blinked several times, confusion in his eyes. I thought you were gone. I smiled through my tears. No, my love. I've been waiting for you all these years. He stared at me for a long moment, then reached up and touched my cheek. You look older, he said with a small, sad smile. I laughed softly, even as tears streamed down. 30 years will do that to a person. He tried to sit up, but winced in pain. Where's Clara? He asked suddenly, his face tensing. The nurse, I said carefully. She ran away after she hurt you. The police are looking for her. He looked away, his jaw tightening. She's not really a nurse, he said quietly. She's the one who raised me. I frowned. What do you mean? Daniel sighed, staring at the ceiling. When I woke up in the hospital years ago, I was told I'd been in a car accident. They said my parents didn't survive, and that I'd lost most of my memory. Clara was my caretaker at the recovery center. After a while, she told me she'd adopted me. Said I had no other family. My stomach twisted. She lied to you, I whispered. He nodded slowly. I didn't question it back then. I didn't remember much. I just accepted it. But deep down, I always felt something was missing. Sometimes I'd have dreams of a little white house, a rose garden, and a woman singing while cooking dinner. I could never explain them. I smiled sadly. That was home. That woman was me. He looked at me again, his eyes full of tears. Then everything I've believed my whole life was a lie. I squeezed his hand. Not everything. You're still you. You still have the heart I remember. But yes, someone took you away from me. Someone made you forget who you were. Daniel covered his face with his hands. Why would she do that? Why would anyone take me from my own mother? Before I could answer, the door opened, and a police officer stepped in. Mrs. Carter? He asked. Yes. We've reviewed the reports. Your neighbor Mrs. Green gave us a full statement. We've put out an alert for the woman known as Clara. But here's the thing, he paused, flipping through his notepad. The name she used doesn't match any registered nurse in the county, or anywhere else. We believe she's been living under a false identity for years. Daniel's eyes widened. She told me her husband died in an accident when I was a child. The officer nodded. We're beginning to suspect she might have been involved in your disappearance. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. You mean she kidnapped him? The officer nodded grimly. That's our working theory. But we'll need more evidence. Daniel's hands were trembling. I don't understand, he said softly. Why me? Why take me? The officer sighed. Sometimes it's about money, sometimes it's revenge, sometimes it's just madness. We'll find out soon enough. After he left, the room went quiet again. I reached out and took Daniel's hand once more. Don't think about the why right now, I whispered. You're safe. That's what matters. He nodded slowly, but I could see the storm of emotions behind his eyes. Fear, confusion, anger, sadness. We spent the next few hours talking. About the past, about the years we'd missed. I told him about his father, about our old home, about how I'd never stopped searching. He told me about growing up in different towns, always feeling out of place, never quite belonging anywhere. Then, as the sun began to set outside the window, a nurse entered the room with a worried look. Mrs. Carter, she said, there's someone here asking for you. She says it's urgent. I frowned. Who is it? She wouldn't give her name. But she said you'd want to see her. Daniel and I exchanged a nervous glance. Where is she? I asked cautiously. In the lobby, the nurse said. She's waiting near the entrance. I turned to Daniel. Stay here. I'll go see who it is. He nodded, though his eyes showed concern. Be careful, Mom. I stepped out of the room and walked down the quiet hospital hallway. The lights flickered slightly, and my shoes echoed on the polished floor. As I turned the corner toward the lobby, my heart began to race. Then I saw her. Clara. She was standing by the exit, wearing a black coat and a hat pulled low over her face. But I knew it was her. When our eyes met, she smiled, a cold, bitter smile. You should have stayed away, Margaret, she said softly. You have no idea what you've started. I froze, my pulse thundering in my ears. Why did you take my son? I whispered. What did you do to him? She tilted her head. You think you deserve the truth? After what your husband did? I blinked, confused. My husband? What are you talking about? Her eyes darkened. You really don't remember me, do you? She said. But I remember you. I stepped back slowly, my breath catching. Who are you? She took one step closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I'm the woman your husband destroyed. Before I could respond, she turned and bolted through the doors into the night. I ran after her, shouting, "Stop!" But she disappeared into the darkness before I could reach her. My heart pounded as I stood there, trembling under the hospital lights. What did she mean by that? What had my late husband done? And how did this strange woman fit into the story of my missing son? I didn't have answers. Only more questions. But one thing was certain. Whoever Clara really was, she wasn't done with us yet. The cold night wind brushed against my face as I stood frozen outside the hospital doors. Clara had vanished into the shadows like a ghost, leaving behind nothing but confusion and fear. Her last words echoed in my mind. I'm the woman your husband destroyed. My husband, Richard Carter, had died long ago. He was a good man, kind, honest, hardworking. Or at least, that's what I had always believed. What could she possibly mean? What could he have done to her? I turned back toward the hospital entrance, my legs trembling beneath me. As I walked through the doors, I spotted 2 police officers at the front desk. I rushed over to them. Officers, she was just here. I panted. The woman who attacked my son, Clara, she was outside. She ran away. The younger officer immediately grabbed his radio. Suspects spotted near hospital grounds. All units keep watch. The older officer looked at me with concern. Are you sure it was her, ma'am? I'm sure, I said firmly. She spoke to me. She said she knew my husband, that he destroyed her life. He frowned slightly. We'll look into that. But you should stay inside where it's safe. She could be dangerous. I nodded, though my heart was still pounding. I didn't feel safe. Not yet. Not until I knew the truth. When I returned to Daniel's room, he was sitting up, his face pale but alert. The relief that washed over me almost made me cry again. Mom, he said quietly. I heard shouting outside. What happened? I took a deep breath. It was her, Daniel. Clara was here. She said something strange. His brow furrowed. What did she say? She said your father destroyed her life. Daniel blinked. Dad? But I thought you said he was a good man. He was, I said firmly. At least I thought he was. I don't understand any of this. He looked away, his jaw tightening. If she blames him for something, maybe that's why she took me. Maybe she wanted revenge. The thought made my stomach twist. Revenge? On a child? He shrugged weakly. People do terrible things when they're angry, Mom. Maybe she thought taking me would hurt you. I shivered. But that was 30 years ago. Why wait so long to show herself again? He didn't answer. He just looked out the window, his eyes distant. Before I could say anything more, Mrs. Green entered the room, her face pale but determined. They just told me what happened, she said, setting her bag down. Margaret, you're not going anywhere alone again, you hear me? I managed a faint smile. I promise. She sat beside me, lowering her voice. The police are doing their best, but she's clever. They found her car parked 2 streets away. Fake plates, no ID inside. Daniel looked up sharply. She's not going to stop. I know her, Mom. She always said people were liars, that she couldn't trust anyone. I think she's sick. I took his hand gently. Then we'll make sure she can't hurt you again. But deep down, I could feel it. Clara wasn't done with us. The next morning, a detective came to see us. Detective Harris was tall, with sharp eyes and a serious face. He carried a folder under his arm. Mrs. Carter, Daniel, he said, sitting down. We've been looking into this Clara woman. We found something interesting. He opened the folder and pulled out an old photo. A woman in her 20s with long dark hair and a nurse's uniform. My heart skipped. It was Clara, but much younger. This was taken 31 years ago, Harris said. Back then, her name was Clara Benson. She worked at St. Mary's Hospital. The same hospital where your husband, Richard Carter, Used to volunteer. I blinked. Richard volunteered there, yes. He helped with the church charity drives. Harris nodded. It seems your husband and Clara knew each other well. According to records, they worked together for almost 2 years before your husband died. Daniel frowned. So what happened between them? The detective hesitated before speaking. There was an incident. According to old hospital files, Clara was dismissed after she was accused of forging documents and stealing medical supplies. She claimed she was framed, said it was your husband's fault. My heart sank. Framed? That can't be right. Richard would never. Harris held up a hand gently. I'm not saying he did, but she clearly believed he ruined her career. After she was fired, she disappeared. No one saw her again, until now. I sat back in my chair, stunned. So all these years she's been angry at my husband? Angry enough to take your son, Harris said quietly. We think she took Daniel as revenge, to make you suffer the way she believed your husband made her suffer. Daniel looked down at his hands, his face pale. She raised me like I was hers. Told me my real parents died. I never doubted her. She must have enjoyed watching you search all those years. Tears welled in my eyes. That's evil, I whispered. To take a child just to hurt someone else. The detective nodded solemnly. We'll find her, Mrs. Carter. But be careful. If she's resurfaced after all this time, she might try to contact you again. He stood, leaving us with the file photo of young Clara. I stared at the picture long after he left. The woman in the photograph didn't look cruel. She looked sad, lost, and broken. But that sadness had turned into something dark, something twisted. Daniel's voice broke the silence. Mom, if she blames Dad for her pain, maybe she wants more than revenge. Maybe she wants you to know the truth. I looked at him. What truth? He hesitated. I don't know. But she seemed obsessed. Like she's trying to prove something. I nodded slowly. Then we'll find out. Together. That evening, I went home for the first time since Daniel's return. Mrs. Green insisted on staying with me, though she fell asleep quickly on the couch. The house was quiet, too quiet. Every shadow felt alive, every creak made my heart race. I walked to Daniel's old room. It was just as I'd left it. The same faded wallpaper, the same wooden bed, the same photo of him at 10 years old on the dresser. I picked up the picture frame and smiled through my tears. Then I noticed something. The corner of the old photograph was torn slightly, revealing a second layer beneath it, another picture hidden behind. My fingers trembled as I pulled the back of the frame open. There it was, a second photo, older and faded. It showed my husband, Richard, standing beside a group of hospital volunteers. And right next to him was Clara. Her hand was on his arm, and they were both smiling. My stomach dropped. I stared at it for a long time, a mix of disbelief and dread swirling in my chest. Why had he never mentioned her? And why did it feel like that smile wasn't just for the camera? Just then, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up, and my blood ran cold. The message had no name, just a number. It read, "Now you remember me, Margaret? You can't hide the truth forever." I dropped the phone, my hands shaking violently. She knew where I was. Before I could move, a loud noise echoed from outside. A car door slamming. I rushed to the window and looked out. Under the flickering streetlight, I saw a dark figure standing at the edge of my garden. Clara. She looked straight up at my window, her eyes cold and unblinking. Then slowly, she raised her hand and pointed directly at me. I gasped and stumbled back from the window, my heart hammering. Mrs. Green woke up from the noise. Margaret? What's wrong? I pointed toward the window, my voice trembling. She's here. Mrs. Green ran to the window, but when she looked, the garden was empty. She's gone, she said quietly. But I knew what I'd seen. Clara had been there, watching, waiting, and something in her eyes told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The morning sun crept through my curtains, but I barely noticed. I hadn't slept all night. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every shadow on the wall looked like Clara. I kept replaying that message on my phone. You can't hide the truth forever. What truth was she talking about? What did she mean by that? Mrs. Green made me a cup of tea and placed it beside me. You look like you've seen a ghost, Margaret. I let out a weak laugh. Maybe I have. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't just fear. It was something bigger. Something I didn't yet understand. I decided to go to Daniel's house later that morning. The police had installed cameras around his building and placed an officer nearby for safety. When I arrived, he was sitting by the window looking outside. "She's not coming back, Mom," he said softly, sensing my worry. "They'll find her soon." I tried to smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. "She sent me a message, Daniel." His head snapped toward me. What? What did it say? I showed him my phone. His face went pale. "She's watching us." "I know." He rubbed his temples. "Mom, maybe there's something Dad didn't tell us. Something from before I was born." I shook my head quickly. "No. Your father was an honest man." But even as I said it, that photo, the one of Richard smiling beside Clara, burned in my mind. That evening, Detective Harris called. "Mrs. Carter, we've located a cabin registered under the name C. Benson. It's about 50 miles from town. We're sending officers there tonight." I felt a rush of relief and dread. "You think she's hiding there?" "Possibly. We'll call you when we know more." But hours passed with no news. The waiting was unbearable. Around midnight, I got up, grabbed my coat, and whispered to Mrs. Green, "I'm going there." She jolted awake. "Margaret, no," the police said. "I need to see her. I need to know what she meant about my husband." Before she could stop me, I was already out the door. The drive through the dark forest was long and silent. The road was empty, and fog hung low, twisting around my headlights. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. Every part of me screamed to turn back, but something inside whispered that I wouldn't sleep until I faced her. Finally, I saw it, a small wooden cabin hidden among tall pines. The windows glowed faintly. I parked my car quietly and stepped out. The night was eerily still. I crept closer, my heart pounding in my ears. Through a crack in the window, I saw her. Clara. She sat at a wooden table, her hair gray and tangled, staring at a photograph, the same one I'd found in Daniel's room, of her and Richard together. I took a deep breath and knocked. The door creaked open slowly. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You came," she said in a low, trembling voice. "I want the truth," I said. "What did my husband do to you?" For a long moment she said nothing. Then she turned away and sat down. "Your husband, Richard Carter, he ruined my life." "How?" I whispered. Tears filled her eyes. "We were in love, Margaret. Before he married you." I froze. "What?" "I met him when I was 22. He told me he'd leave everything behind for me. But then he met you. And he left me with nothing. When I got pregnant, he said it wasn't his. The hospital fired me because of rumors he started. I lost my job, my home, everything." I shook my head, backing away. "That can't be true. Richard would never." She slammed her hand on the table. "You think you knew him? He came to me months after you got married, begging me to stay quiet. He gave me money to disappear." My breath hitched. "You're lying." She opened a small box and slid it across the table. Inside were old letters, photos, all written in my husband's handwriting. My name, his signature, his words. I read them with trembling hands. "Please, Clara. You must understand. I love my wife. I can't lose her. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Just disappear." The room spun. I dropped the letters. No, it can't be." Clara looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "When I lost the baby, I blamed him. And when I saw you both happy, I hated you. So when I found your son, I took him. I wanted him to love me the way Richard never did." A sob escaped my lips. "You took my child because of a man who's been dead for 30 years. She nodded slowly, broken. "I thought it would ease the pain. But it didn't. Nothing ever did." Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. "Police. Open up." Clara looked toward the door, then back at me. "It's over," she whispered. Before I could react, she pulled something from her pocket, a small vial. "No." I screamed, lunging forward, but she drank it before I could reach her. Her body went limp in my arms, her eyes staring past me. The police burst through the door, but it was too late. I knelt on the floor, holding her lifeless hand, tears streaming down my face. Why did it have to end like this? I whispered. Detective Harris gently pulled me away. Mrs. Carter, you need to step outside. Outside, the cold night air hit me hard. I looked up at the stars, my heart heavy with grief. Clara's last words echoed in my mind. You can't hide the truth forever. And she was right. I couldn't. My husband had betrayed her, and I had lived my whole life not knowing. But even after all the pain, I felt sorry for her. Because beneath her madness, all she ever wanted was love, and it destroyed us both. Days later, Daniel and I stood at the old cemetery, staring at the simple grave the police had arranged for Clara. He placed a white flower on it and whispered, "Goodbye, Mom." I looked at him, startled. Mom. He turned to me, his eyes soft. She may have done terrible things, but she still raised me. I can't hate her completely. I nodded slowly. You have a good heart, Daniel. Don't let this darkness take that away. He smiled faintly. I won't. I have you now. As we walked away from the grave, I looked back one last time. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, I thought I saw her. Young again, standing beside Richard, smiling softly. Maybe somewhere beyond this world, she finally found peace. And as for me, I learned something that day. No matter how much time passes, secrets always find a way to come back. And the truth, no matter how painful, is the only thing that can set you free. Lesson. Love built on lies can destroy generations. Always seek the truth, no matter how long it takes. Because only truth can heal what pain has broken. If this story touched your heart like it did mine, make sure you subscribe, because more untold grandma stories are coming, and each one will remind you that love never truly fades.